let's say, 21-year-old Mike, it's 2020 now. If you had a time machine, what would you go back and tell him?
A ton more. I'd just buy a ton more property. That would be the easiest. I would have a ton more property, and I'd probably focus my time on systems. Very, very obvious thing in the entrepreneurship world, where most guys will just go out there and start a company, but not actually have any foundation or any base, right? That's very typical. Most companies fail because they don't have a base, right? So I think I would have probably had a better base. I would have had a better program, or, what you guys essentially have, right? Be a doer, not a don'ter. Just get out there and do it.
One of the slogans we really try and live by now, my team, is ABBA. And it stands for Always Be Buying Aggressively. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing advice for first-time investors with my buddy, Mike Van Houdt. This is a great video. We really break down a lot of the mistakes and problems we see novice and beginner investors making, and it's probably not what you're going to expect. So if you guys enjoyed this video series, let me know. Would you like me to interview more entrepreneurs, more successful real estate investors, and hear what their tips are for beginner investors? Let us know in that comment section down below. Otherwise, let's dive into today's video. What is up, YouTube? Matt McKeever here with Mike Van Houdt again, and just a quick little recap in case you haven't been watching our other videos. Mike's been a real estate investor now for coming up on 17 years. He started back in, it was
2004.
Yeah, 2004. He's touched over 200 units, at different points in time during his investment career. Currently has about $12 million in real estate, and in today's video, we're just going to touch upon what our advice is to anyone starting the game now in 2020. How do you become a real estate investor in 2020? What's changed about the market, or is it still essentially all the same fundamentals?
Yeah, I think the fundamentals are the same. I think the numbers are all the same. I think the gut is the most important when you make decisions, right? The gut is the most important. Depending on the year, on how young the new guys are. But if you're young in your 20s, I think you just balls to the walls, right? You just buy what you can, you talk to as many people as you can, you learn. That's why you're watching this video, but you go through this process, you get as much information as you can, you buy as much as you can, you pick up the phone, you call, you go meet, you touch as much touch points as you can. And yeah, nothing's really changed in that space of that game. I think what's changed is the information for everybody and what everybody does with that information they get. I think that's important to know, and how do you dissect the good from the bad, and just not, an analysis by paralysis, right? Don't do anything because you're just absorbing and trying to make the right move, and that's sometimes a problem, right? So I think if they get away from that and they just do it, and in every video I'm in so far, all I say is just do it. Be a doer, not a don'ter. Just get out there and do it. Get to the gym, as an analogy, right? But just do it. I think that's the biggest push that somebody needs, right? To do it.
One of the slogans we really try and live by now, my team, is ABBA, and it stands for Always Be Buying Aggressively.
Correct.
And that's just because way too often, to be honest, the biggest mistakes as a real estate investor I think I've made is being too conservative, holding myself back from deals that I knew couldn't lose money, but I was like, I don't know, it'd be a little bit tough to find the money to do this deal, so I just talked myself out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's very typical, but not just in real estate, in every business, every format, people are always finding reasons not to do it, not reasons to do it, and they take the merit and the value of not to do it higher than to do it. They get excited about it initially, and then it fades out. So I think for the young guys that are getting in the game, suck it all up, put the effort in, put the time in, and and just buy as much as you can, but buy it with some sort of end game. That 20 years from now, 10 years from now, because when we bought properties, we were saying we're going to buy it and keep it forever, right? That was like a slogan across the board. But the game has changed a little bit in that space, where you buy it and you have to have some sort of plan with it potentially, right? I mean, keeping it forever is great the first 2, 3, 4, 5, but at some point you're going to get to the block with 7 properties. You need help. Right? That's the first step to changing your business. When you get to 30 or 40 doors, that's another step. You're changing your business. When you get to 100 doors, you're changing your business. So you're always kind of changing, So
absolutely.
It's just not a one-trick pony. And they'll have a lot of, diversions, as I mentioned before. But I think that at the end of the day, as long as they're doing it and they're trying it, it opens the door for a lot more. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I think that's probably the best angle. But.
So you got started at the age of 21, right?
Yep.
So let's say, 21-year-old Mike, it's 2020 now. If you had a time machine, what would you go back and tell him?
A ton more. I just buy a ton more property. That would be the easiest. I would have a ton more property, and I'd probably focus my time on systems. I think that's what one of the things that it's a very, very obvious thing in the entrepreneurship world, where most guys will just go out there and start a company but not actually have any foundation or any base, right? That's very typical, and most companies fail that way because unless you have a big upstream in the economy, but most companies fail because they don't have a base, right? So I think I would have probably had a better base. I would have had a better program, or what you guys essentially have, right? You have a structure for every single department of your business, right? And how you grow it. So I think that's probably one thing that I would do better at. I'd have a proper bookkeeper, accountant. I'd have structure and leases. I'd have all these programs in place that when I get in, it's just really just a plug and play scenario. Whereas when I got it, I'd get a receipt from here. I'd be like, oh, that for that property. And the game that we all play, right? We have a property, we just write the name, we put in the box, and then 6 months later, you're like, what did you buy for this property? And we're like, this is plumbing. I can't remember what. We get caught in that trap, right? So I think that structure is very important when you get into it, because at the end of the day, you guys will have time. Like, you have time to go and spend that effort on structure, because you're not buying a property tomorrow. You're not going to watch this video today and then go buy property tomorrow. You're buying a property 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, maybe 2 months from now. And in that time, you need to build structure when you get these properties to put them in some sort of system that's right for you. I don't think just buying a property and then realizing, okay, what do I do now? That's what happened to me, right? I bought it and I'm like, okay, what's next? How do I get a lease agreement? How do I get these parents to co-sign? How do I make sure utilities they're going to pay for utilities? What if they don't pay? Like those types of detailed micro things that I don't really care about. I think macro. I'm thinking like, hey, I'm just going to buy 20 properties and I'm going to keep going, right? Which is great, but you need to set up a base, I think, for the young cats, because they're in a very busy space where there's lots of property, lots of information they can get and use in that space, but structure they don't have, right? So that's what I think is
I definitely think structure is really important, especially if you're looking at scaling up your real estate business.
Yeah.
Are you a big goal setter? Do you think is goal setting important to someone starting out in real estate investing? I know a lot of investors, when I talk to them, they'll have like, my goal this year is to buy 1 property, or my goal is to buy 2 doors, or whatever the case is. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, because I'm more of an entrepreneur at heart than I am a structured person at heart. I think for me, it was just acquiring units at that point and just saying like, wow, do you think I can buy, like going from a 3-unit place to my next biggest one at that point was a 6, and then a 7, and then I went from a 7 to an 18, and then I went from an 18 back to a 13, and I went from a 13 all the way to a 36, and then back to a 22, and then I think back to a 7, but it was something like that. But basically it was like 36 and 22 were my 2 big ones.
Yeah.
And going through that scale, it was like a leap for me, right, of sorts. I knew that it worked before, and I knew that if I did those type of things, it would just work again. But it's a whole different game dealing with 36 people. It's great on one hand, where you're thinking like, I'm one central, boiler, one central. Yeah. All the central stuff we talk about, that's great. But then the other hand, you have 36 units that if you have 3 issues in one day, Bob the handyman can't do all 3 in one day. So now you've got to scale differently, right? So in terms of goal and buying properties, I really didn't have one. At that point, it was just about, can I do it? Let's try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't. Works, great. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But also because I've always had other kind of businesses on the go, I've kind of always been distracted. You see, I'm a very distractible guy, as you probably know. So for me, it was like doing this was like great, but I wasn't never all in. You see, that's the only thing which I see today, is that everybody's all in, which I wasn't. So this probably is from the back video. So one of my biggest mistakes is I should have been all in. But that doesn't fit to what I'm about. That's the thing. So, as a person, whoever's watching these videos needs to look at what they're about, and if they feel that, they're goal setters. Some people are goal setters. Some people make X amount of dollars. They put that much to utilities, that much to this, that much spending. Some people are structured that way. And sometimes those people don't jump over the hill and actually make the decision because they're too structured, as opposed to me, no structure at all, buying everything he sees. And then we're like, whoa, this is like a mess, because like you're over the map. But real estate's so forgiving, as we always talk about, that it just rises. So it doesn't make a difference if you're a mess. So in some respects, it's like, which position do you choose, right? Especially starting off new. The first 1, 2, 3 properties, the first thing that goes to your mind is this. Do I take the first one and refinance it, pull the money out, and buy the 3rd and 4th one? Or do I just pay the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd one down? And is there a correct answer for that? And the answer is no. It's what are you about, right? What are you about, Matt?
Yeah.
What are you about, John? What are you about, Jane? What is the game plan for you guys, right? So I think it depends on yourself for sure, and what the strategy is. But for me, goal setting, I would have to have goal setting now, because I actually think, okay, you know, in my 20s, I didn't think at any point in my life I was going to get slower, more lazy, I might die one day. Those things don't cross my head, but they do when you get closer to 37 that I am today, right? You think about home. At 37, all the 50-year-old guys are saying, you're so young, you know? But as you get older, you start worrying about these things or thinking about these things. And when you're younger, you're like infinite. I'm going to keep it forever, you know?
Yes.
I can't buy property today thinking, I'm going to keep this forever, for next 200 years. Unless unless I bought it from somebody that had it for another 150 years. Then I would say that, you know? But we're in a world of short-term thinking, where instant gratification, those type of things do not lead to long-term thought processes. And short-term processes are the thought, right? So my goal when I bought these things was I need a pension, so that was my long-term strategy. But 5 and 10 years out, man, I'm thinking like 2 weeks out. You know, so I'm not structured. So the structured people definitely should have some sort of structure, but need to take a bit of sugar from us, unstructured people, and we need to take some sugar from the structured people and kind of blend it together, right? And put it out there. So yeah, I think you're definitely structured, aren't you? You have some structure to yourself.
I'm a bit of both. So like I definitely originally,
both sides?
Yeah, originally when I came into real estate, I was very much on the structure side of things.
Okay.
But as I've been growing my portfolio, I've really tried to let go of that and outsource a lot of the operations oriented stuff, and really tried to focus more on being, you know, the dreamer or the visionary or the deal maker. Because at the end of the day, you know, as I grow my portfolio and level up, I think that that's the highest, best use of my skill set.
Yes.
And it's the most valuable, like, per dollar thing. Like, it's very difficult to hire that out.
Yes.
Where hiring out the operations is a bit easier.
Yes. And also that's your strengths as well, right? I mean, it also feeds to strengths. Your strengths is in understanding how things look at from the top.
The macro.
Right? The macro, for sure. I mean, like, I go to some of my places and I look at a backsplash that's not perfectly straight. And I wouldn't even say the old Mike, but I would say that parts of me at some point can get ticked off and say, like, look at this backsplash, you know, like, it bother you, but you don't want to be there. You just want to let it go. You know what? It's going to be there. Real estate's so forgiving. You can do, you know, you can mess up, and that's another thing that we can have another video on, basically, on how forgiving real estate is. And you can butcher 30 apartments just training to get the right one, right? So you can start your rental business just training on your own properties.
Yep.
A lot of guys do it, you know, and there's no other business you can do. You can't start up like a burger joint and then try different burgers. So every time the customer walks through the door, you have different burgers, right? But you can do that in real estate. And that's why this real estate is so flexible, and you can approach it from so many different angles to try to see what works, you know, and you can be structured like that guy. You can be in the middle like you, or you can be totally wild, wild west like me, you know? So there's all kinds of, and everybody fits in this game, and it always works, right? Because the math works, people need somewhere to live, and at the end of the day, it's fun and you get to meet great people.
Yeah.
So that's the reality.
Love it. Let's talk about, you know, how do you recognize a deal? Or how do you decide that, like, this deal has a good enough ROI? And I'm going to give a bit of context here, because I see it all the time on my YouTube channel and at networking events, where people come to me and they've done like 30 pages of analysis. And, you know, they've got 10 different metrics. They're showing me what the ROI is, what the ROE is, what the IRR is, the cash on cash. And, like, they're just hitting you with all these facts. I'm going to guess that you're not coming to a deal with 30 spreadsheets, Mike.
I'm going to grab a lighter so I can burn that piece of paper and throw in the garbage, because that's exactly for me where it needs to be. I don't look at those numbers, and of course you have to look at some sort of numbers that it can pay the bills, but at the end of the day, what does your gut feel about the money you're putting out? And on top of that is, yes, that is great, and there's a lot of obviously effort, time spent in those metrics, but where are you at with your real estate investing, you know, environment at that point in time? I think that's going to dictate those numbers. I think that is very important if you're buying a 200 unit building and you're going with 10 guys and you're, letting people down, right? It's a letting people down strategy where you don't want to let people down. So you want to make sure that you do everything in your control to make sure that's on point. And that person, what are we going to call that person? A John?
Yeah.
Okay, John. So John shows up with all this writing. and this stack of paperwork, and I'm going to ask John questions from the heart and ask him and see if he has the answers. And I guarantee you John won't, because John's using his mathematical side of the equation. And the problem is, it doesn't always work on math. You know, there'll be properties that you see future potential with, and there are loss leaders that you need to buy sometimes just to get that space. You know, like there'll be a property in a great location, loss leader, but you know what, hasn't been sold in say 40 years. You want to pick it up because that's a unique property. Now, if it's a space that's been turned over 30 times in the last 10 years and it's been, you know, flogged and flogged and flogged, then the math can look great, but my gut's not in it.
Cashflow Tribe.
Hey YouTube, have you checked out Cashflow Tribe yet? It doesn't matter whether you're an experienced, seasoned investor or brand new to the game. I can probably predict if you're currently not having the level of success you want as a real estate investor, it's due to one thing. That one thing is, you're not making enough offers, plain and simple. You need to be making more offers as a real estate investor if you want to hit those big, audacious goals that you're setting for yourself. So here's the deal. Cashflow Tribe, that's the community that myself and Ben were making together. And so Ben's actually so busy trying to provide value to you guys that he had to take off there. But here's the deal. Cashflow Tribe is really a one-of-a-kind community focused on results. That's the difference between us and everyone else. We want to get you guys those results. I'm tired of seeing people commenting on my YouTube channel for 2-3 years now, but they're not making offers. What's holding you back? I'm going to guess that it's either a lack of confidence or a lack of competence. And we cover both of those things in Cashflow Tribe. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you guys a 7-day free trial offer. You can join Cashflow Tribe completely free, get to test it out. If you like it, great, stay and pay. If you don't, well, I hope you at least find one great idea that you can take away and use to start making more offers, gain more deals, and finally start making the money related to real estate investing that's probably why you're watching my YouTube channel. So let's do this, guys. Let's make 2020 your year.
Cashflow Tribe.
The problem is, it doesn't always work on math. You know, there'll be properties that you see future potential with, and there are loss leaders that you need to buy sometimes just to get that space. You know, like there'll be a property in a great location, loss leader, but you know what, hasn't been sold in say 40 years. You want to pick it up because that's a unique property. Now, if it's a space that's been turned over 30 times in the last 10 years and it's been, you know, flogged and flogged and flogged, then the math can look great, but my gut's not in it, and I feel like this is not for me, right? So there's different things that you look at in a deal. I think if I'm going to partner up with somebody, the partner is the most important to me, regardless of what we buy, because our relationship to me, I joke about this all the time. And for me, this sounds really out there to say, but everybody has a dollar value attached to them of sorts, right? So like, what are you willing to burn? Like, what am I willing to burn Matt McKeever for? You give me $200,000 of your own money. Am I going to burn you for $200,000? What's our relationship worth, right? So relationship worth is a really big factor, because I know I can go to war with you. And what is that number? So if that number is $5 million, I'd rip you off for $500 million. I wouldn't rip you off for $2 million or for $200,000, right? So it's what's the angle of what that person's worth. So that's how I judge the first thing. And the second thing is, what is that person's outlook and mindset at the time? And if that person's mindset at the time is similar to mine, then I feel we partner up on something, and then whatever he's looking at or she's looking at is going to be similar to mine in terms of what I think a deal is. You know, and in terms of exact metrics, I just can't look at them, because for me and my life, it's worked. Now, that can't say for the structure John, it hasn't worked. Like all the buildings he's bought, that's been perfect, that's been on time, you know. And the great thing about real estate is we can have another video shoot in this, but it's like, think about this, the slumlord versus the guy that fixes everything. That's a really good conversation to have. Where slumlord buddy doesn't take care of nothing, buys as many units as he can, doesn't care about the tenants. How much money does he make versus the one that cares about it, right? And takes care of everything, making sure the plants are all watered, making sure every bulb is the same. He doesn't have any 90 waters, they're all 60 waters, right? He just makes sure, and they're all the same color, all cool white, or warm white, right? They're all exactly the same, whereas this guy doesn't care, right? So it's so complex and complicated, but if the structure game has worked for you, then stick with it. And if the Wild Wild West game has worked for me, then I'm going to stick with it because it's worked, you know? But I think commonly, though, the denominator all comes down to taking action and be a doer and not a don'ter, right? That is the most important step. to get it. And I think, yeah, that's for me and for most people, because you see it on your channel all the time.
Yeah.
The people that don't make the decisions are the ones that constantly lose. You know what I mean? So for sure, I mean, it is tough. You've seen some of these metropolitan cities. What's happened is that you'll get people that buy, like pre-construction. They'll put their name in. They'll give their deposit. 6 months later, they sell it, they flog it, they assign it, whatever. They make money, and they keep doing that. And that creates that wave, right? And what's happened is that now we all look to that wave as like, oh man, this guy sold 10 pre-construction houses in the last 10 years, and he's made, call it $1 million, right? 10 million, whatever number you want to call it. So now you're like, I'm going to be next. But then you'll have the what ifs, So that's about strategy and understanding where you are. The problem is these guys are never going to stop, because now if they lose the next one, it doesn't matter. They've already made their 10 million, right? So that is a lesson to us to teach us that we just have to start now, right? Don't wait. If the real estate's what you're after, right?
Yeah.
Don't start now, but taking action is the most important thing. And as much as people can watch this video and get hyped up, they'll probably lose taking action tomorrow. Right? So you got to just keep being reminded to take action. It's very difficult to make a change, and in business you see this a lot, where people, and I mean that's why big brands will try to keep people on consistency, subscription models, those type of ideas, so that people keep doing the same thing. To make change is very difficult. People don't like making change. So if they've never bought a property before, to get them to buy one is like
a massive change.
It's a massive change. Once you're in it, you're like, this is making this change is not that hard,
Yeah.
But we all go through it. We all go through struggles and stuff like that, so, but yeah, that's, but I'm definitely not a structured person. I don't know if you guys have not noticed or not, but not a structured person at all.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, though, just kind of breaking down the different, I guess, philosophies you have in regards to investing, because a lot of people want to be very rule oriented. They want to know exactly like what's the cash on cash return in this specific situation. And one of the mistakes I see a lot of new investors make is they get really honed in on exactly what the property is doing today. And they ignore the potential. And especially in hot markets like we're kind of dealing with in southwestern Ontario, you need to really be looking at what's the full potential, and then, in my opinion, what's the realistic potential? So the realistic potential is, hey, I know if I get in there, I'll probably average 10% turnover naturally, just through attrition, through people's lives changing. Where the full potential is, what if I got all fair market rents for every unit that's in the building the moment I close? Well, that's unlikely, because there's a lot of variables that are outside of our control. But if we can start looking at what's the realistic potential of the property, all of a sudden, properties that didn't look like a deal originally, because right now the returns are so poor because maybe it's under rented or mismanaged, versus, okay, well, if I flip over a couple of these units, now I can get it up to a slightly better, higher use.
And you got to think is that you can't think that way if you don't walk the line. That's the problem, right? So you can't be thinking that far down if you're not there yet, right? You can't be thinking about, I mean, I understand people market brands and try to figure out how their product labeling is going to be on their product, but they haven't even bought the land yet, built the factory, talked to employees, they haven't even got there yet. So I get there's some thinking there, but if you focus too much on that, then nothing really gets done from the start, right? So the guys that are just starting is that is sort of an understanding, a thought process at that point when you get 5, 6, 7, and you can pivot, right? Because you'll always have to pivot, in terms of, like you said, the strategy is you buy an expensive property, let's say right now, it doesn't cash flow, but there's potential there, you get the potential. It's very difficult, and sometimes people will get down on themselves understanding that you can't get the potential as quick as you want, right? You'll see a lot of that, and that is destructive in a sort. That's why you have to either buy more properties or distract yourself, and know that it's a long-term game, and the long-term game is the important part, so, yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Any other last-minute advice for aspiring investors, someone that's just been sitting on the sideline? We can tell them to go take more action, but I think at some point in time that almost falls on deaf ears just because they've heard it a million times before.
For sure. I think the most, I always try to say, for me, it's energy, right? It's energy. I try to make sure that I give as much as I can so that people on the other side can see it and they can do it. So I think for me, it's pushing energy and doing it. And people have energy on stuff that sometimes is not important. Like they'll put the stuff and the time and the questions on something that's not important, or they'll make these assumptions that, like, in the car business, it's very easy to say. People will ask me, like, well, they'll walk in the store, and because I was in the car business, one of the first things they'll ask me is this question. They'll say, how much discount can I get? And I'm like, you haven't driven the car. You don't know what options you want. You don't even know if this is the number you want to spend. You don't even know if you like the look of it. What if the seats don't fit you? There's so many things around not working or working, right? There's so many things. So I think that talking yourselves out of it, and again, I go back to being naive and being in your 20s. Being in your 20s is the greatest place to be in terms of experimenting. There's no better space because life will have a lot of challenges in the future, right? Like children, life, money, all that stuff will kind of all put together. Because people want more of your time. If you have time to spend on this thing, you need to get out there and diverse yourself in as much of this information as you can, but you have to take the leap. And you have to buy it, even if it's small. Buy the cheapest thing you can find, right?
Yeah.
If you just got to practice, buy the cheapest. Buy a condo for $89,000, right? The cheapest condo you can possibly find. Not for you guys in Toronto or Vancouver. So buy the cheapest condo you can find at $400,000. But you know, really, that's what they got to do. They got to do it. And like you said, trying to buy the perfect deal is very difficult. In nothing you buy, you can't.
We still can't buy perfect deals.
Man, I can't even buy perfect pants. They're either too tight or too loose. They're either too long or too short. Nothing in life is perfect, but then you get them hemmed, you work into them, you eat more, you drink more, whatever it takes to fit in these pants, right? You just got to figure it out and make it work. So yeah, nothing in life is easy, and you don't want life to be easy. That's the other thing, is that if life is easy, it's boring. And like, I mean, take celebrities. You can see celebrities going crazy, doing drugs, killing themselves, suicide, all this fun stuff. And it's because they're just so content. And the crazy part about it is that my whole life, I was always gnawing and clawing, just like probably most of the viewers here, to try to buy properties, get them financed, get all this stuff. And when you get to a certain point where you don't have to claw anymore and you can actually walk on solid ground, you're like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I'm like in this weird space, right? You know? So you, just because you get to the top of the mountain, it doesn't mean you're finished, but also embrace the journey up the mountain. You know, that is exciting, and that's as much as you can yell at people and say, buy property, take the first, you know, buy all this stuff, they're not gonna listen to you. They're gonna think what's best to them. You try to educate them. You can't push them off the couch to get off their butt and go buy something, but it's a journey, right? They always say it's a journey to buy. It's a journey to go through this process, and you'll learn, you'll make great connections. And yeah, and I wouldn't be sitting here on this channel and Matt wouldn't be sitting here hosting this channel if it wasn't for real estate. So it's fun, it's exciting, and you know, hope you guys are enjoying the content.
Yeah, I love it. And one last thing, guys, I always like to think of what Jeff Weibo says: ready, shoot, aim. Way too often we're waiting for the perfect shot when we'd be better off taking the shot and using that to help us aim afterwards. Absolutely. So the same thing's true with real estate investing. Get into that first deal, whatever it looks like. That education alone will truly be priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thanks for watching. Thanks to Matt for having me on the channel.
Thanks again to Mike Van Houdt for taking the time to sit down with me and break down his top tips for beginner investors. If you guys want to know my absolute #1 tip for real estate investors, it's go make more offers. I can predict exactly how many deals you're going to get if you make 0 offers. 0 offers equals 0 deals. Way too many investors get cute and they start trying to complicate the entire process. Let's boil it back. Let's demystify the entire process. In fact, that's what we're doing every single day in Cashflow Tribe. So if you guys haven't checked it out, there's actually a link in this video description over to Cashflow Tribe. You can join for your free 7-day trial. Check it out. I promise you're not going to be disappointed with that free 7-day trial. In fact, we've got hours and hours, dozens of hours at this point, of on-demand content, live training every single week, all kinds of resources and tools, a ton of stuff. Check it out, Cashflow Tribe, link in the video description down below. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff, and we'll see you tomorrow.